Let me surprise you. Watch what's happening. This is the side window of an animation I did. I didn't plan this outcome, but I thought it's quite nice and cool. The reason I'm doing this tutorial is to show you how you can mix different techniques in order to get very complex results. Because I never told this object here to move like this and then pause and move higher again a couple of seconds later. There's a lot of randomness in here, but not all of it is random. So let's switch to the rendered scene now. This is F-check. I play back the animation, the rendered files, 1000 rendered files actually, using F-check, which is a free tool which comes with Maya anyway, and it's very slick and convenient because it just loads in thousands, if you want, single files, and then plays back the animation after caching it properly. Okay, so this is the animation, 1000 frames, and I composed this little piece of music here with African drums, with a bass, with a squeaky synthesizer, and with some warm strings in Cubase, which was just a matter of 10 minutes or so. Enjoy this couple of seconds of this animation, and then we'll dig into this stuff. Okay, so let's change the background color to a more sober color. Okay, so this was my starting point. I created two curves, this curve and that curve, and a loft, which is a NURBS loft here between them. Then I converted this lofted surface, which I hide now, into a polygon, and I scaled the polygon down a bit. This is the polygon surface. It looks quite different from the NURBS surface because I used the texture deformer in order to deform it. And here you see the deformation quite nicely. So the texture deformer is here in the outliner. So when you select your object, you find the texture deformer somewhere in the history here in the it's not the outliner, it's the attribute editor. I animated the strength of the texture deformation. I delete the expression and type in 1, so it's much less, and it stays little. It's more or less the same height. It was much more extreme before. I deleted the strength animation, and let's undo this. When you mouse click here, you can edit the expression. Actually, you can see the expression. It means the strength of the texture deformer is equal to 2 plus sine of time, and it basically means it changes over time with a sine, with a wave, stronger, less stronger, more stronger, etc. And the 2 plus is for the purpose that it's a positive value all the time. So that's the first thing I animated. And when you go to texture here, I mapped the texture deformer here with a bulge. And I didn't do anything here apart from changing the width and in U and in V, which is not very critical here. Let's change this value from 0.7 to 0.3, for example. You see quite a lot of things do happen actually. Oh, this is the U width now 0.8. Whatever. The more interesting thing here is place 2D texture, and there's a lot of animations here. The translate frame, and I delete this expression. Actually, let's have a look at the expression. The expression basically means the translation of that frame in U direction is time divided by 10, so it's much slower than 24 frames per second. That's a speciality which is not really crucial here, but it's crucial that it is animated. So when I delete the expression now, and I change this value from 0, you see that things change. Basically the U value moves. I also animated the rotation and the translation in V, and that's basically all I did. Now let's start a new scene, and I'll show you the basics how to get there, and at the end I'll show you the rendered file again. So let's do it very simply using a grid. Actually, we can deactivate the visibility of the grid, and with this object selected, we go to in the attribute editor to polyplane, and we raise the resolution to 100 by 100. So we have quite a nice resolution and lots of things here happening. Now we apply a texture deformer. It's under animation and deform, and here you find the texture deformer. We could use the option box straight away, but we'll just use this command as it is. The texture deformer sits here. It does nothing because we haven't applied a texture yet. So here is the texture deformer node in the attribute editor. We go to texture and to the checkerboard icon, and we use, for example, a noise. You see it's already here. The noise would be much more higher in resolution if we had a high resolution of our plane. So that's why the resolution of the original mesh is important. But this is just fine. And what we can do now, we go to place text 2D texture and check the translate frame value here. I press and hold the, what is it called, command key, and with the middle mouse button I go to translate frame, and you see it already moves, sort of. It's not very clear in what direction, and here it's the same. It's just the other direction. What we'll do is we'll animate this with a time function, which is so simple. Just do it. Equals time, enter, and then you have the animation. So this is the flow of the text. Basically the text, the noise texture moves along that plane. I think it's a little bit too fast. You can stick to it if you like, but in order to make it slower, you can right mouse click, edit expression, and down here you have the expression you just wrote, equals time. That's what you did. You can divide the time by 10, so it will become a much slower animation. Like this. I prefer this actually. By the way, when we reduce the coverage here from 1 to 0.2, for example, we only get this part here moving along that grid. Let's extend the animation range here to 600, say, or 400. So we see it's a very nice effect really, and you can rotate the frame like this, so the texture deformer moves across that surface like this. You can use a wave deformer in order to create waves. That's a very simple and straightforward way to create waves. It has some disadvantages compared to the ocean simulation in Maya, but it's a very nice way to get started. So let's go back to coverage 0.7 maybe, and the rotation 0. So it's still a straight animation. So next thing I want to do is I want to create an object which I'll place on this deformed plane as a mesh network. So I start with this cone here, and the cone is when you deal with mesh actually that's right here, you need a pretty low resolution in order to get a good performance. So let's go to the attribute editor and reduce the subdivision axis from 20 to say 4 or maybe 6, and well, that's basically it. We have a very simple and nice object. Let's create a new material for it, an Arnold shader, a standard surface shader, and we give it the color red. So we have a red cone now, which is not totally round, but it just doesn't matter really. We'll scale it a little bit down because we need many of them, and we'll distribute them on the surface here. So with it selected, we go to Mesh here, or here, you could go here as well, and choose this icon. It starts with a mesh network. It basically creates 10 instances of that original object, and it hides the original object as well. So this is hidden now. This is the cone we just created, and this is the mesh network with 10 of them. We don't want them to sit here in a row. Instead, we go to the mesh distribute node, and instead of linear we pick mesh. It's a mesh actually which needs to be put in here. Accepts mesh. That's when you mouse over this field here, input mesh not connected, it accepts a mesh network. And of course we want this surface here, the deformed surface here, and we middle mouse drag the polyplane right here. And now you see the red dots move with our waves. We certainly don't have enough of them, so let's increase this number to 1000. And in order to make this more interesting, you can now do several things. You can change the color, the size, lots of other things here, but you can also work with the dynamics of this texture deformer. So let's go back to the texture deformer and check the strength. So the strength is this effect. So what we can do is we animate this by typing in equals sine of time. So it swings up and down. I mean, it gets stronger and less stronger. And since the effect is very little, we can go to edit expression, and we amplify this by typing in 4 times sine of time. Edit, close, and check out the result. So now we have nice mountains here for our red objects. What I'll do now is I go back to the original object, which is invisible, and it sits here, and I scale it down. I don't have to make it visible for that, but you see all the instances are being scaled down as well. Then I go to mesh and increase the mesh amount here, the number of points, to 10,000. And now I hide the plane H. And now I have an animation which looks like this. And now you can imagine how the animation I showed you initially came about. Bye bye.